Franklin, where we live, and we found her a house, and we had a great time there. It was 4 years ago.
Okay.
And the first half of that time was good. 68 years old, 67, that kind of thing. And then she had some complications with some MS, had some other depression and things that she was dealing with. And we had instituted a family game night on Monday nights where we would bring her to our home and play games.
Yeah.
So July 25th of last year was one of those Monday nights, and I would have been the one that normally would have picked her up and brought her over to the house for our family game night, but my 18-year-old son did that instead. And unfortunately, tragically, he was the one that found my mom, that she had decided to take her life. And he called the emergency response folks, and all that played out.
And that's just devastating. We're really, really sorry for your whole family, and having been around and been praying for y'all through this. That's an opportunity to really struggle and break down, but you've done the opposite with that in your family.
Yeah, it's really one of those things you don't know until you go through it. And you wonder, like, why does God put these things in your life, in your path, in your story? Mm-hmm. And it was later that night that even in the midst of all that we were processing, that God was bringing some hope. We know that our son had struggled with some issues of self-esteem and depression and different things that he was going through.
Right.
And, I mean, literally 4 or 5 hours after finding her, after everyone had left and we were all decompressing back at the house and asking why. And Garrick said, I think I was supposed to find her so that I wouldn't do that to myself.
Wow.
That's just,
it's huge.
that's massive.
Yeah. It certainly gave my wife and I a huge insight to the level of depression that we didn't quite realize he had struggled with, but then to even think about all of the things that would normally happen would not have put him in that situation.
No.
Sure.
But he was, and to be able to have that was just the beginning of the first ray of hope and healing, even in the immediacy of that, to say, wow, you found her so that you wouldn't do that to yourself.
Wow. And God can, again, what Satan wants to use for evil, God comes in and says, nope, I'm still doing good inside of this, even though it's not what he would have ever wanted for your mother, that it was something that, and I think that's something of a testament to you and Cheryl as well, for raising him with faith and understanding that there's obviously some lessons that God can teach us along the way, that there are things that God can orchestrate and work out.
Yes. It was a difficult road to follow after that, of course, to try to help our son process all of that.
Yes, we're not saying that you went through, like, oh, it's all, sunshine and rainbows
Sure.
after this.
No.
There's obviously
It's devastating.
It's devastating. It's grief, it's anger. You have to process through it, but you process through it, which is amazing.
Yeah, I think that now that God has put suicide in our story, I've always said that we go through things not just for us, but for the ability to share.
Right.
So I've learned, for example, that the semicolon is sort of like the logo for suicide awareness, the idea that that's where an author could have put a period to end the sentence, but the story continues. And even to hear when we process things at the memorial service and with the funeral undertaker and all that, I forget the statistic, number 3 killer in Williamson County. I mean, it's high statistics for suicide across the board. And I guess for those that don't know what Williamson County means, a lot of folks think of that as affluence, as people have a couple of extra bucks.
Success.
And it doesn't mean anything in terms of the depression and things that are inside. Right. I chose to share my mom's story also on the heels of what she wanted for her end-of-life memorial.
Yeah, and that was a whole big
Now that's
big
display.
celebration of life, epic proportions.
Yes.
So tell us about that.
Well, she had asked about this years ago. She said, when I go, this is how I want to go. And she had me research it, and it was just not, it was happening a little bit, But she said, when I pass away, I want to be cremated, and I want my ashes to be put in a fireworks display.
Okay.
So, when I
Not
made
the first thing we all think of.
No.
So when I made the phone call to the to Williamson Memorial, that was actually one of the more humorous things, because I could tell the guy thought maybe I was a crank. Like, really?
Like you're joking.
Yeah. But that's what they do, and that's what people have done, and it was something that we shared. So I wanted to tell that story. There's a gentleman, Brad Schmidt, that writes for the Tennessean and USA Today. We were able to share the story of my mom, the story of these fireworks, and I was honored that we chose the 70th birthday, what would have been her 70th birthday, 7/7/17, this past July.
Oh, okay.
And the story was on the front page of the Tennessean for that day, and the ability to share that story, because if nothing else, talking about these generational things, there were things shared in that story that had never been shared before. The idea that my mom had grown up in an abusive relationship with my grandmother, that my mom had her head held underwater, that she had been pistol whipped, that she had just had devastating things done to her, so much so that she chose at the age of 15 to get married, just to get
away.
out.
Right.
She didn't have
Right.
me till 19. It wasn't a must marry.
Right.
It was a let's get out of the situation. And the idea that my mom never really fully unpacked that.
Right.
And if nothing else, I know that that's one of the bullet points for my story is many therapists told my mom that she needed to unpack the abuse, and she did not choose to do that. She thought there might have been a pill or some quick fix.
Right.
But it was that depression and that devastation that put her in a frame of mind that was not truly her, and drew about that ultimate action.
Yeah, and what I find interesting, especially about your mother's generation, is that they were taught, we talked about from early on when we're taught, but they're taught not to share. They're taught to be quiet about it, don't tell anyone about it. And
Family secrets.
It's family secrets. And that was what was acceptable. It wasn't acceptable to talk about these things. So that's something from her past that she didn't want to unpack, but then you were able to, again, as I said, you processed through this, you're getting through, and you're sharing this. So you, in many ways, are taking a completely different approach and changing your family tree and the dynamic.
Yeah. And I think that all began with a small thing that my mom, I don't believe, did this for religious reasons, but I was put into a Christian school in 3rd grade more for academics than anything else. But it was through that course of charting me on a relationship with Christ that led to a difference,
Change.
a diversion off of that tree, right? So that things could be different. I believe my mom has had faith in Christ. I believe I know where she is.
Yes.
That she accepted Jesus. But I also know that there were a lot of walls that kept him from working fully in her life.
And digging deep and healing, one of the things we talk about in this show and other episodes is how the brokenness, if untreated, that it literally can kill you. And it can do it in the way it did eventually take your mom's life. It can do it in other destructive patterns that we run into, but not going to God and not reaching out for help to process that internal brokenness can ruin your health. It can ruin your emotional status. It can bring in depression and devastation.
Yeah, and that depression I know affected your family as well, even before the suicide. That it was something that concerns those people, around us when we are suffering with depression. It's not something that's isolated.
Yes.
Oh, it's just me. Well, it's those people who are around you too, who care about you, who are affected by that. Fortunately, none of us live in a bubble.
Yeah, it would be nice if we did. And I know, like when I was dealing with depression, the first I recognized that it was affecting anybody but me, because I thought I covered it up really well, was when my 2-year-old son drew smiley faces of everybody in the family, except for my face, he put a frown. And I cried and cried, because that was my wake-up call for I've got to change something. And we start seeing where, now I don't think any of my children would put a frowny face as their representation of me, because I laugh too much. But it's, again, where do we where do we choose that? And I know in your family, because obviously we've had Cheryl on here and she's told a bit of her story, which again, so many of us have that broken background. But your mom obviously changed things she knew she could for you in sending you to a Christian school, whatever the reasons were, trying to put you in a safe environment, trying to improve things. And I know that y'all, for your children, have done the same thing. How can we bring hope and healing? How can we represent and model a different mindset, following Christ instead of?
Yeah. Was the fireworks display, was that a moment where you felt like you were kind of blooming out of this dark time? Or was there something else that happened that...
No, I think that was definitely, I thought one thing that I have yet to do over this whole process is have the big cry. Is have the big emotional release, and maybe it won't happen because you go into so many other modes of protection and anger and just processing things as they're happening. But I thought I might cry during the fireworks and lose it and have that emotional release, but it was just a feeling of pride. Every child wants to have the pat on the back from your parents to, this is what you wanted, and this is what we did, and there's 90 people that are gathered here to see this 10 minutes of display and this article in the paper and this opportunity to share this story. This is the moment where you probably would never want me to share all this, Mom.
Right.
But you raised me to do the next right thing.
Right.
And I do believe that sharing that story and trying to find the hope in it, we can't just curl up into a ball and let things happen to us. It's an opportunity to share. So that really is the overwhelming message that I would bring, is that don't give up on those that you love. We loved her. This was a choice that she made. And that we're going to continue to love each other and use these examples in her life and our life and try to impact other lives.
Yeah, and keep growing and keep building a stronger heritage, more godly, like run toward God instead of away from Him when the devastating things happen. And
let Him come in and heal all of that hurting and grieving. And you may cry, you may not. You may be so proud. But, well, Doug, these are all the reasons why you are our ex-victim of the week. And we have a gift for you.
Thank you.
we don't know. We don't know if you'll wear the necklace. That might be prettier on your wife.
Okay, I would agree, possibly.
But we also have tissues and chocolates because we are about facing the emotions, rewarding ourselves for doing the good things and the positive things, and actually celebrating, instead of the brokenness, celebrating the healing that comes from God. And we then...
saying, we were broken, but we're healing.
Amen.
That's
Amen.
the ex-victim mentality.
Concept, so we can use the fertilizer of our past
to bloom today.
A free PDF copy of the Bloom in the Dark book and a full list of Bloom Today's coaching tools can be found on bloomtodaytv.com. Then visit Bloom Today's Facebook group for deeper conversation.